Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the day 4 of Google Cloud Platform Tech Drill. And over to you, Rich. Let's enjoy the session and know more about how we can use the features of database in GCP.
So,
Over.
hi everyone. Welcome to the day six of Google Cloud series for Cloud 1.1 at Tactile. So, today I'm going to talk about the database services, or the mainly we'll talk about the storage services in GCP. So, here we have at day six. So, I'll give it a summary. We have started our journey from the GCP, where we have talked about like the GCP platform, what is Google Cloud Platform, where we can build, we can store, and we can perform analyze some kind of operations over the GCP platform, which is a part of IaaS and the platform as a services. And Google Cloud platform is providing a lot of services, and each set some services is categorized into the some set of categories like the compute services, the networking services, the storage services. And inside these categories, there are multiple services where you can use these services for solving, let's say, XYZ kind of problems. So then we have talked about the compute services inside GCP, where we have used compute services for running our applications. So let's say you have written a code on a C++, or you have written, let's say, the JavaScript file or the website. So you can run your website over the compute services. So inside compute services, you can use Google Compute Engine, you can use App Engine, you can use Cloud Functions, or you can use Container Kubernetes Engine. So, yesterday, we have talked about these compute services, and then we have talked about the compute services, like how we can create a compute engine and how we can create a virtual machines, and then how we can access that particular virtual machines with the help of SSH and uh, the cloud shell. And also, we have talked about the demo, like how we can create a web applications over the Google App Engine, and then how we can deploy those applications over the Google App Engine. Then yesterday we also talked about the Google's cloud storage, where we use basically this cloud storage for storing the object type of data. Like you can store uh, the data, let's say PDF file, images file, with the help of Google Cloud Storage, and you can store this data over with the help of buckets. Like you can create an n number of buckets, and inside buckets you can upload or store the data accordingly. So today I'm going to talk about the storage services in the GCP platform. So Google Cloud Platform is providing a lot of options for the developers that satisfy every customer use cases. So in these sessions, I'll talk about mainly the core storage options for the Google Cloud Platform. So, so first, let's talk about the database. So what is database? So database is just like as a set of computer program where we can store the data in terms of in an organized way so that we can perform the operations, let's say the create, read, update, and delete operations in an easy way. So in the market, we have a lot of data, so we can categorize these data into the two part. Like there might be possibility we have a structured data, or there might be possibility like there we can have a unstructured database. So in the market, we have a two type of database, like structured database and then unstructured database. So if I talk about structured database, so we do have some sort of schemas, like we can store the data in terms of the proper structure or the schema. So like if I talk about the structured database, like the tables, so we can store the data in terms of rows and column, which is a part of RDBMS, Relational Database Management System, or the Mysql, where we have a structured database. Like we can create a structure, we can provide a schema, and then we can store the data inside the structured database. But if I talk about unstructured database, unstructured means there might be a possibility like it may be user generated data or the machine generated data, which have a which do not have a like static pattern. Like there might be possibility some data will be coming from, let's say, XYZ things with X structure, but tomorrow the data will be coming with PQRS structure. So this is about unstructured database where we do not have a schema. So we can store that data in terms of collections, records, and the documents. And in the market, if I talk about unstructured database, like here we have MongoDB, Cloud Firestore, there are multiple databases you can use for storing the unstructured data. So now I'll talk about the storage services in GCP. So whenever you are working on a GCP platform, so here we have a lot of options for storing our data in GCP platform. So in this video or the sessions, I will talk about the, the main four core database services or the cloud storage services. So first one is cloud storage. As you know, cloud storage we use for storing a object type of data. Like we can store PDF file, images file. You can use this type of data for uh, and access this data in your applications. And then we'll talk about cloud Bigtables, cloud SQL, and the cloud Spanner, and then we'll talk about cloud Firestore. So cloud storage offer developers and IT organizations durable and highly available object storage services. Like here, you can upload object type of data, which may be PDF file, audio file, any type of file. It access no minimum fees, like you need to pay only for what you use. And Google Cloud Storage always encrypted your data and serve over the client side. And there's no additional charges, but you have to pay as per your data. And your cloud storage file is organized into the buckets. Like yesterday, we have talked about like how we can create a bucket, and inside bucket we can create a directory, and inside directory we can put a file, and then we can provide access. Like the file may be public access or the private access. So if you want to store object type of information, then you can use cloud storage. Then we have a cloud Bigtables. So cloud Bigtables is a part of NoSQL database where like whenever you have a highly amount of data, let's say if I talk about the zettabyte of data or the petabyte of data with low latency, like we have a let's say zettabyte of data, and I wanted to access that zettabyte of data within a second, so I can use the cloud Bigtable. So cloud Bigtable data services are like it is same with the power of many Google Cloud Go services. Like it's a fully managed services, and here you don't need to invest your time for managing the data or scaling your data. So uh, the best practices is you need to spend your time for developing your applications. You don't need to worry about the scaling or the configuring the database or the performance or scalability about your database. So you can use Cloud Bigtable for storing the queries. Like if you are working on uh, very large set of data, then you can use cloud Bigtables. Like this is how like Google or is using cloud Bigtables. Like Google is using cloud Bigtables database as a YouTube whenever you are searching any XYZ videos over the YouTube. So the data will be stored into the form of big tables, and you can perform read write operations within a millisecond over the zettabyte or petabyte of data over the big tables. And like cloud Bigtables is generally mainly used for in the like marketing data. Let's say whenever you are running a marketing campaign, so we have a lot of amount of data in terms of users. So we have a marketing campaign, and then we can create a charts. We can perform some sort of queries on a large amount of data. Then you can use the Bigtables. Or if you are working on financial sectors, so the companies are using cloud Bigtables for performing the history transactions, stock price, currency exchange rate, and similarly, if you are working on IoT, so in IoT we have a sensor. So sensor is generating a data, and we need to store the data in a database part, and that data may be in a zettabyte form or the petabyte form, and then we need to perform some set of queries over that particular data. So here we can use the concept of cloud big tables. And then we have a cloud SQL database. SQL database is just like as a structured database where we can store the informations in terms of tables, uh, inside tables we can have columns and the rows, and which is very fully managed relational database as a service, where you can create a SQL database inside Cloud SQL database. Like you can create a MySQL database, or you can create a PostgreSQL database, or you can create a SQL Server database. Uh, yeah, it's offer many service or many features, like it will automatically back up your data. So you can provide some sort of like cron jobs, like let's say at 4 p.m. on every day, it will automatically back up your data, and then you can store the backup into the cloud storage. And also, cloud storage instance include a networking firewall, which allow you to control the network uh, access, like this database can be accessed through any network or the private network, so you can provide this kind of configurations. But if I talk about the SQL database, so there is some set of limitations. Like in SQL database, we can store the data maximum the size is around 30 TB. So there is some sort of limitations. Or if I talk about the limitations about the columns, like how many columns we can create inside the SQL database, there's a limit of about 1,000 columns. If I want to scale my data, and let's say wanted to perform more operations over the SQL, then there is another option is Cloud Spanner. So if I like SQL database, we have a limitations around 30 TB of data. But if I talk about the more performant and scalable and RDBMS data, then you can use the concept of Cloud Spanner. So Cloud Spanner is provide a strong consistency, including strong, consistent secondary indexes, and it is highly available. It is highly managed services. You don't need to worry about again the managing the database, like how much load is taking over the virtual machines or the database part. You don't need to worry about the backup part. You just need to write some logic, or you need to perform the task for the backup of the things. And Cloud Spanner is especially suitable for the applications. Let's say you are working on an RDBMS and where you have a lot of amount of data, more than 30 TB. Then you can use Cloud Spanner, and it is built for highly availability with less consistency. Have. And it is strong at global consistency and database. Like you can store the informations more up to the 2 TB of informations, and you can perform tons of read write operations over the within a millisecond. So let's say in my SQL database or Cloud Spanner database, I have more than uh, thousands of rows. So you can perform read write queries within a millisecond, and then you can use the concept of Cloud Spanner. And Cloud Spanner is generally mainly used for the gaming. Let's say if you are working on a gaming companies, so who users or the developers is using Cloud Spanner, where they can create a user profile real-time database. Like here, you can create a dashboard for the users, like you can provide a real-time report for online gaming. Or if I talk about the fintech companies, they are using Cloud Spanner because in fintech company, there is no limitations about the users. So we need to scale our business logic. We need to scale our data. It's maybe more than 30 TB, then you can use this Cloud Spanner. And then if I talk about the healthcare, we have a lot of amount of data in terms of medical reports, in terms of, let's say, for the machine learning, we have a lot of data from the recommendations. Then you can store that data into the Cloud Spanner, and then you can perform the operations. And like you can perform these operations over the n thousands of rows within a millisecond. Then we have a next options is name is Cloud Firestore. So Cloud Firestore is a NoSQL database where basically there is no proper structure about your data. So you can store your data in terms of collections, documents, and then data. So like inside database, you can create n number of collections, and each collections can have a multiple documents, and each document can have a multiple fields. And which is very fully managed services. Uh, and which is specifically built for highly availability and scalability. You can perform asset transactions over the cloud Firestore. And yeah, it's properly truly support serverless architecture. You just need to focus on the coding part or the business logic. You just need to worry about the business part of developing your applications, and that's it. And Google is take care of about your data once you are choosing the options as a cloud Firestore. So this is all the basic services or the options where you can store our data. So I will give you the demo like how we can create the SQL database over the GCP platform, how we can create a cloud file store data, how we can store the data over the GCP. So let me share my screen. So here I have opened cloud.console.google.com, and here I have selected a project name is Cloud Vector. So first, what you can do here, you can go to the view all products, and then you can go to the storage services or the database services. So here in the database, we have a lot of options. So you can use Cloud SQL, you can use Firestore, you can use Spanner, you can use Bigtables, and there are multiple databases as services that you can use. So first I'll talk about the SQL SQL, Cloud SQL. So here we have a dashboard for Cloud SQL. Now, Cloud SQL is fully managed SQL uh, RDBMS database. So here you can create an instance, like you can create a database over the Google Cloud Platform. So here we have options like you can choose MySQL database, you can choose PostgreSQL database, you can use SQL Server's database. It's totally up to you because three of them are working on the RDBMS system, like relational database system, where we have a structured type of data and then we can store this structured data into the table format. So let's say I'm using cloud MySQL database. So I'll click on the MySQL. So here you can define the instance. So let's say I want to store the informations and my instance name is Tactile Cloud DB. And then you can provide password. So like as a super admin or the admin of that particular database, so you can provide a password. So let's say I wanted to provide a password is 126. So here we have a password 123456. And then you can select a database version. So you can select a database. Let's say I wanted to use MySQL 5.7. So as of now in this sessions, I'm using MySQL 8.0. And then you can define this database as a availability. So I can provide a multi-zone availability, or I can provide specifically single zone availability. It's totally up to you. And here we have a configuration. So as of now, we have selected this region and my database version is this one. And I'm running this database over four core CPU, and the RAM is around 26 GB and the storage is around 100 GB. So if you want to customize the configurations, you can click on the show more configurations options, and then here you can select the machine type. So let's say you can use shared code RAM, you can use lightweight. So let's say I'm using the lightweight, the cost will be down and the memory is around 3.75 GB, the RAM. Also, you can customize the storage. Let's say I want to use SSD or if you want to use normal drive, so it's totally up to you. So I can reduce the size, like as of now, we have selected 100 GB for the storage, where I'm running my database, but now I'm using 10 GB for allocating for the storage. And you can automatically increase the storage. Let's say whenever you have a lot of data, more than 10 GB, it will automatically scale. So you can enable. And then the connections type means the private and the public. So private means like anyone can access this data over the internet with that particular IP. So you can define the IP and then you can call this one. So I have created a public IP. I'm not using private IP. Means now in this video I'll create a database and then I will access this database through my virtual computer. So here in the backup, so you can create a schedule for the backup. Let's say it will automatically create a backup for the database in within that particular time period. So I can select the time period name is 2:30 to 6:30 a.m. in the night, and then you can enable the time to find a recovery. And again, this one is for the maintenance. There are multiple things that you can use. It's totally up to you. And I'll click on the create instance. So my instance is created. So you just need to wait for a few seconds and then your database is will be ready. So here it's showing the instance is creating and I can access the instance once the instance is created. So till that time, if you have any questions, you can ask your questions. So here you will get the configurations like how to connect the database with that particular as a connection string. And once the database is created, you will get the public IP and you can assign this public IP over the MySQL Workbench and then can access this data. And here we have a chart like you can check the graph like how the load about your database. And in the user sections, you can create users. So as of now, database creating, so I cannot do anything. So I just need to wait for a few seconds. And then, yeah, yeah, it will take some time for creating an instance. And once the instance is ready, then you can access the data. So for accessing the database, you can install MySQL uh, Workbench in your our system, and then you can create the connections, and then uh, you can apply the password, and then you can access the data uh, from through MySQL Workbench with GCP. Yes. My database is created. Now we can access this data through MySQL Workbench. So I have installed the MySQL Workbench. So what you can do here, you can copy this public IP. So I'll click on the copy button, and then you can click on the plus symbol for creating a new connections. So here we have a connections name. So here you can type the connections name is Tactile Cloud Database, and then you can provide a host name. So my host name is this IP, and this is a by default port number, and you can create a username. So if you don't aware about the username, so you can click on the user, and here we have a user, and you can change the password. So as of now, we have created a password. The value is 12345 6. So what I'll do here, I'll type root, and then you can store this password in here and click on OK, and then click on the test connections. Or you can just, you need to define the IP. So what you can do here, you just go to the Google and then type my current IP. So my current IP address is this one. So you need to allow, give the permit to the this particular IP. So here in the connection sections, in the public IP sections, here you need to define the IP range. So here we have Rich Raj IP, and then click on done and click on save button. Then my instance is again restarting, and we just need to wait for a few seconds, and then we can access. Yeah, instance is ready. Once again, I'll click on the test connections, and yeah, yeah, connections made successfully are done. So we have created a connections with the database. I can enter the database. I'll click on this one, uh, the tab, the tab, and then we can navigate to the database. Yeah. So here I have entered the database. So as of now in the database, we have a table as of now, which is by default table. It says table, the schema. Inside the schema, we have a table, and then we can check this table. So this is a by default schema. So what you can do here, you can create a schema. Let's say I wanted to create a database. So let's say database is for Tactile. So I'll click on apply, and then we can create a schema. Yeah. So schema is created. inside this schema, we can create a table. So let's say if you wanted to create a table, so what you can do here inside this schema, here you can click on the create table, and let's say my table name is user, and here you can provide the column. So let's say the column name is name, which is the data type is, let's say, varchar, and then you can provide another column for, let's say, email. The field is varchar here, just change the varchar. And then you can store, click on the apply button, and then we have created a table. So here we have created a table, and if you want to check the data inside that particular table, so here I'll click on the user, and then here we don't have any data in the this users table. So this is how like we can create a database, or this is how we can use Cloud SQL database. First, we need to create an instance, and then we can define the IP. Like if you want your database will be accessible from public network, then you can click on the public IP, and then you can provide the IP. Or if you want to create a private IP, means this instance will be accessible through the public network, then you can click on the public private network. And yeah, here you can create like here you can get the information. So as of now, in this instance, so we have the database name is Tactril. So what you can do here, you can also delete this entire schema through this portal, or you can create a backup. So let's say, yeah, like as of now, we have created a schedule, like it will automatically back up from this particular time durations and the retain, and this is the time. So if you want to create a backup manually, so you can click on the create button, and then you need to define some data, and then it will create a backup. Here we have a replica sections. Let's say if you want to create a replica of that particular instance, then you can go to the replicas, and then you can. So here, then next we have operations. Here you will get the logs report about the data, like let's say create operations perform, update operations perform. So you will get these kind of things. Or if you want to, let's say, change the configurations about the database, then you can go to the edit configuration section, and then here you can define the configurations. So let's say I wanted to increase the machine type, the RAM is around 15 GB. You can assign the storage. It's maybe the storage capacity is more than, let's say, 100 GB. So here we have a range. And then you can define the configurations about the network and all. So you can do you can change the configuration. It's totally up to you. Or we have a lot of options. Let's say you have a data and you can import the data. So you can click on the import button, and then you can select the SQL file or the CSV file, and then you can dump that data into the SQL instance. Here we have a section for restart button, means you can restart the instance, you can stop the instance, you can clone the instance. So as of now, stop this particular instance. And yeah, so this is the Cloud SQL database, like which is fully managed SQL RDBMS service. And then we have another database service. The name is Cloud Firestore, which is a NoSQL database for fully manageable services. So here we have options for Cloud Firestore. And as you mentioned, like Bigtable, basically we use Bigtable for, let's say we have a zettabyte of data or the petabyte of data, and we need to perform some transactions, let's say read, write operations within a millisecond, then you can use the concept of Bigtables. But if you have a very less amount of data, let's say in a GB or TB, Bigtable is not suggested for doing this type of transactions, because this is very costly and expensive. But if you have a highly amount of data, then you can use the concept of big tables. So now we have another database service. This is Cloud Firestore, which is again NoSQL fully managed services. So in Cloud Firestore, we can store the data in terms of collections. So as I mentioned, it's like in Cloud Firestore, we can create a collections, and inside collections, we can create an n number of documents. And inside documents, we can write any content. So this is Cloud Firestore. So here we have a section for the data. Here we have a section for the indexes. Here you can import the data. Here you can provide a security rules. So let's say I can provide some sort of security, like this collections will be accessed by the XYZ type of users. Like admin can access these collections, editor can access these collections, or the viewer can access these collections. So we can provide the rule in the security rules sections, and then you can enable the rules. So if you can go to the data part, so first, like as I mentioned in the Cloud Firestore, first you need to create a collections. So here, this is the root directory. So here we can create a collection. So let's say my collections name is user. So I'll click on the users collections. So let's say the document ID. So inside the collections, we can create an n number of documents. So let's say I'm creating a document. This is a random generated document ID, or you can assign the document ID, let's say user one. And then you can define the field. So let's say field name is user name is, let's say, John. And then you can define the email ID. So let's say email ID is, let's say, example.com. And you can define the multiple fields inside, like this is the connections. Here in the connections, we have created a document, which document ID is user one. Inside this document, I'm writing this content. So here you can define n number of things. Let's say you want to provide some age, then you can use the data type as a number. If you're working on a Boolean kind of things like is enabled or disabled, then you can select a Boolean. Or if you are working on an array of object, then you can use a map. If you are working on storing a data in terms of array, then you can use array. Or if you want to store the information as a timestamp, then you can select the data type as a timestamp. Or if you are storing information as a latitude, longitude, then you can use the Julia point as a data type. And if you are referring some document ID from, let's say, another instance or another collections, then you can use the reference. So what I do here, I have just, as of now, we have created two fields inside this document. I'll click on the save button, and then here we have a collections. Inside this collections, we have a document. And inside this document, we have a two fields. So what you can do, like as a structure, like in this collections, we can create an n number of documents. So what we can do here, we can create another document. So I'll click on add document. And here, let's say I'll type user two, and the same field, like this is name two. And here we can define the email ID. So let's say example 2@gmail.com, and then click on the save button. So the things is working in this way, like in the collections, we can create a multiple documents, and each documents can have a multiple fields. And again, this is like nested things, like inside a document, we can create a collections. Means inside a document, we can create a sub collections, and inside sub collections, we can create a nesting sub collection. And if you want to create another collection, so let's say I'm creating another collection, is called, let's say, projects. So here, let's say the project one, and then here we have a name of that particular project. So let's say my project name is P1, which is reference for, let's say, user whose UI, user ID is one. So we can create a reference this way. So this is how we are storing the data into the cloud Firestore, which is working on a NoSQL things, and you can export the data. So if you want to export the data, then you have some sort of data, and then you can do that. And you can provide a security use, and you will get uses inside, like how many read operations is performed, how many CRUD operations is performed. So as of now, you will get the report. And then we have a key visualizers. Here you get the report in depth. So as of now, we haven't enabled the key visualizers. So yeah, so this is how we can use storage services within a GCP. And at last, like yesterday, I have talked about the storage. So storage services where we can store a block type of data, the object type of data. So like inside storage, we can create a bucket, and inside bucket we can store the data. So this is how the structure is working. So yeah, so that's all for today. If you have any questions, you can ask your questions, or till that time you can fill the form. Yeah, and open for questions. Yeah, that's all from my end. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to ping me on Discord server. I'll be there and I'll be happy to help you over the GCP.
Thank you so much, Raj, and thank you everyone for being here. Good night. Take care.
Yeah.
See you all tomorrow. And maybe tomorrow, Raj will also talk about the project which we'll be giving to you, which you can submit for the certificates and like which you can build using the learnings. So yeah, let's meet tomorrow. Bye. Good night.